welcome everyone. Welcome to the Only Difference Is You show. Today we've got a special guest, Mohammad Momo Ullah. Did I pronounce everything correctly?
Ullah, but
Ullah. Okay.
that's still a good attempt.
Damn, man. It can't be perfect, all right? I can try.
Yeah.
But all right, well, what should I call you? Mohammed Momo? I just pretty much copy pasted what you gave me. I don't know what's
Everyone,
yeah.
everyone calls me a Momo.
All right, cool, cool.
It's literally on my jacket, man.
All right. And how long have you taken that? Has it been early age? It's just a nickname that stuck with you?
So there's literally a difference of opinion amongst my friends as to who is the friend that originally gave me the name,
Ah, okay.
since like high school. So it's
Yeah.
literally a debate in of itself as to who originally gave Momo the nickname Momo, because
All
I don't
right.
remember giving it to myself,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
But since I'd say like 2009, so like high school, right?
Yeah.
So over 10 years, I've had it as a nickname. And it just goes very well with both personality and just setting me apart from all the other Mohammeds out there, right? It's like
Yeah.
the most common name in the world. So
Yeah.
got to find some way to stick out from all the other Mohammeds. No offense to them.
Are there really that many? I mean, if you're of that culture, yeah, but it's like what the everyday American isn't running into a Mohammed, but maybe if in your community, then it's pretty common name, probably the most common name in the world almost. So something like that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely the most common name in the world. Every
Yeah.
now and it's not just like a joke that people
Yeah.
throw around. Like every
Yeah.
now and then, like there's some statistics that will say that it is actually the most common name in the world in some
Yeah.
given year. Especially given that there's so many different ways to spell Muhammad. Like it's
Yeah.
the same in Arabic, but in
Yeah.
English there's like seven ways to spell it.
Yeah.
So
And then interesting we're talking about this because doesn't Omar come like number two or three right behind Mohammed in the entire world
yeah,
of names? Omar's not too rare actually. It's rare like I'm in Los Angeles. It's rare to run into another Omar, much less an Asian Omar. I don't think I've ever met another like Chinese Omar, a Filipino, yeah, but not anyways. Um, but yeah, no, I
Omar.
yeah.
Omar can be pretty. I mean, obviously, if you go to the Middle East, also double check that it's recording because I just saw it kind of exit out of the Streamlabs. So is it still recording?
No, oh no, I unshared the video, but I'm recording through Streamlabs.
Okay,
But
good. All
no,
right, good.
good
All right.
looking out. Thank you, appreciate
Yeah,
that.
but yeah, Omar is definitely still a popular name amongst not just Muslims, but I want to say I met even some Hispanics
Mhm.
for some reason somehow that have that name. Definitely some African Americans
Yeah, yeah,
that have that
definitely.
name.
Yeah, yeah,
They may not even be Muslim, but for some reason it's like every now and then you find some black rapper that has like a
you,
Muslim sounding
yeah.
name. Like
Omar
you're
F. So,
learning.
some actors. Yeah, it's a very cultural name. Omar actually, now that you mentioned it
Yeah,
has spread up. I don't think I've seen a white Omar. That's one that I've yet to see is a white one. But uh,
one day you'll meet one. I
yes.
promise you. One day you'll meet some white Omar and you'll be like, what? Are you even Muslim? And he'll say, oh no, I'm not. Just my parents thought, it was cool because that one rapper or something. Th- th- these kind of stories exist, man. It's just how
Yeah,
it is.
with hundreds
Um,
of millions of people, it's bound to happen at least one time, if not more.
yeah, but trust me. I mean, China alone has over 23 million Muslims, even though most of them are Uyghur. I mean, there's
Yeah.
like 10 different ethnic groups that are primarily Muslim.
Uh-huh.
You're bound to run into some kind of plenty of Chinese Omars. Trust me.
All
We can go
right.
to China right now. I can find you some Chinese Omars for you.
And man, and we just like went off on and we didn't even talk anything beyond your name. I wanted to say like I wanted to introduce you like I introduced the Asian sensation. Like in this corner, we've got Mohammad Momo Ullah, the Wushu Lawyer, and then we didn't even get to
There we
that part. We
go.
just like totally went off on a tangent. So
Yeah.
but the
Yes.
Wushu Lawyer, when out of everything we talked about, man, that's like the most interesting thing because no, I didn't know that they call you the Wushu Lawyer until you mentioned it towards the end, and I'm like, oh, okay, so you actually bring something
Yeah.
from your personal life in, and then you blend it into the marketing for your identity because you're all about setting yourself apart, So it's just kind of a theme that you carry into your professional
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. Like at first, like, I think, part of being an attorney and, especially being a solo attorney, like I do get to call my own hours,
Uh-huh.
the hours are mine. To some extent, I am at the mercy of my clients, their
Yeah.
schedules, but otherwise, I get to mostly call the shots on a daily basis. I don't have some professor telling me to show up for a class at a certain point in time. And I don't have a boss saying I got to be in the office at 8 or 9 in the morning and clock out by 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have a lot of time to still continue to my practice of Chinese martial arts. I've been doing Chinese martial arts since October 2014. So as of this year, it's been a little over 6 years I've been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been training under a Shifu, a martial arts master in our Chinatown here in Houston, which is where I live. I live in Houston area. I live in a suburb of Sugar Land, but I live in the Houston area.
All right.
And my master, I've been at his Shaolin school since like summer 2015. So it's been like about 5.5 years I've been under his tutelage. Even under the pandemic, I'm still going 2 to 3 times a week to his school.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the students have gone either online or have kind of paused their training because they're afraid of coming to class and catching the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Which, we wear masks even while training, even while running and doing sparring. If you look on my Instagram, I'm sparring with a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. It's actually good training. It teaches you how to control your breath.
Yeah, it's a little
so
bit
I've been
harder.
doing that.
Yeah, right. It's not as easy. So you're training a lot. It's like harder. Whatever you're doing, it adds 10-20% effort, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I continue. I was kind of hesitant about going solo in the beginning, but I'm really glad that I've been able to continue being solo, but still practicing martial arts.
Okay.
And then additionally, back in February, I picked up K-pop dance because there's literally a dance studio literally 2 doors down from my martial arts school in the exact same shopping strip.
Yeah.
So it's just hella convenient. It's just like the best of both worlds. And then obviously going to weightlifting at the gym, 3 to 4 times a week. I literally just came back from the gym before I came back home to do this interview. I literally just came from 24-hour fitness.
Wow.
Today was a leg day.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
So, I'm working out probably somewhere between 7 to 9 times a week. And I'm still able to maintain.
And I mean, you're 2 hours ahead of me. I'm 9 p.m. here in California, and you're 11 p.m. So you're working out pretty late at night.
Yeah, well, the gyms, at least at 24-hour fitness, despite the name, under the pandemic, they've shortened their hours, so they close at 9 p.m.
All right.
So they open at 5, but you got to be out by 9, otherwise they will literally kick you out.
So do you keep a consistent schedule, or do you sometimes go in before work, or do you always do it in the evening?
It's always an evening or afternoon thing for me. So at least for when I go to the gym, but my martial arts class and the dance classes, those have to be those are set times, and I have to show up and be there. But for when it comes to my own gym time, that's totally just on me, though I tend to be there after 5 and no later than 9. Okay. So again, and I have that time to myself. I'll work in the morning, I'll work in the afternoon, I'll work after I work out in the middle of the night. Sometimes some days I do work for my clients until 3 or 4 in the morning. And then other times, I'm literally done with everything by 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. And I only work 2 hours that day. So it just depends on how good or how efficient I am and what's due that day.
Okay. Well, let's, I had thought of 3 major themes from everything we were talking about. So to summarize, maybe for not just for us, but for the audience, what they can expect out of the next hour is, I wanted to touch on, the Wushu Lawyer and how that applies to maybe these 3 areas. Marketing for one, because we talked about how they don't really teach law students any marketing, so they kind of toss you out on your own. How does the Wushu Lawyer, where does martial arts fit into your life, really? And, we'll kind of expand on that because you had mentioned you want to try out for a certain this or that. We'll talk about that later. And then kind of the dating and entrepreneurship, as it applies to your professional life. I don't think we told the audience you are an estate planning attorney, and estate planning is one of those topics that, people don't think about. And you had mentioned a lot of areas like dating, entrepreneurship, and how does that even tie together? I'm curious. The audience might be curious, and we can touch on those areas today and wherever you want to take this, wherever you want to start too.
Yeah. So I guess starting from marketing, I think, because I always knew I wanted to go to law school, but, I always knew that outside of school, I wanted to be known for something a little bit more, and I wanted to do more with my life. In my first few years of college, I was involved in politics clubs and trying to work on political campaigns. But for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like, even if I was making a difference elsewhere for other people, for whatever reason, I just wasn't making too much of a difference in my life. Then one day, one of my friends at U of H just invited me to the Wushu club at U of H. Invited me to class. I said, okay, fine, I'll go
Yeah.
after I take my LSAT. Then I
Okay.
showed up one day,
Yeah.
and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one half of my life. But I always knew I wanted to go to law school. But in terms of marketing, like you just said, like law school doesn't teach you too much about how to run your own law practice or how to be part of running a law practice. They
Mhm.
expect you to learn that on your own after you graduate,
Mhm.
or learn it through an internship or working for a judge, like
Mhm.
during the summer or during the year if you have time.
Mhm.
But I've kind of had to do a lot of the marketing, um, which I have some main projects coming up of that the marketing team has been working on, but
Okay.
stuff like on my own, I've had to do it mostly from scratch.
Mhm.
So one way is like through my business card. I don't have a copy of it here because I keep running out and I need to make another batch. But the one place that started was okay, when people see my business card, how do they know that this is the business card of the Wushu Lawyer
Mm.
without it saying the words the Wushu Lawyer,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
this is where it goes. So what I have here is and I don't know if I want to bring it out here. I don't know where I put it, but it's basically so a
Do you
couple of years
do you
ago.
want to send me the logo on Facebook chat and I can put it on the screen
Yeah,
if
okay,
you have the file?
yeah, I can try to pull it up here. One
If
second. Let me
I think that would be the quickest way for me to show the audience if they're curious while we're talking about it.
exactly. So let me pull it up here, make sure I have there we go. Okay, so now let me go to Facebook.
Yeah.
Let me send it to you. Um, Yeah, and sometimes I wonder in hindsight I could have just sent you some other stuff, but sometimes this is organic, right? This is how we know that we're doing things very naturally, that this is not all a bunch of scripted shit, that we're doing things
I don't like
very
planning things. I've mentioned before that it makes me a little bit more anxious when there's a script. But yeah, I'm not an actor, so I don't want to memorize what I like having, some general themes that we'll touch on. But as far as having exact answers to exact questions, man, that makes me a little bit more nervous. I know a lot of people are reverse and they rather have a script, but hey, to each
uh
his or her own.
actually let me drop it in the Zoom chat maybe that'll work.
All right.
Let's see if now I gotta pull up the Google Drive. Come on, dude. One day I'm gonna clean up this computer a little bit better. Okay, oh here we go. Okay, should be able to drop it now
All right.
into the Facebook chat.
Okay.
Gotta go to Google Drive, go to a folder which I have titled Project Phoenix. And then,
This
all right,
this is
you can pop that image on the screen.
all right. This is all I'm gonna say is all right, let me see. Maybe I could just go like that for while we talk about it. All
Yeah,
right.
don't you can cover my face. Don't worry about
All right.
it.
All right, let's go. All right. Now
So
let's talk
yeah,
about the logo.
so this is my logo. So and this is actually Arabic,
Yeah.
but it's in a Chinese script. It's called the
Okay.
Sindanese script
Okay.
because Sindanese comes from the word signification. Have you ever heard of that? Whenever the Chinese would make other parts of their regions or their neighbors more Chinese,
Okay.
so they're
Yeah.
called Sindhi. So
Okay.
this is Arabic. So from right to left, it says Mohammad
Uh-huh.
Ullah. So that's my full legal name. Okay,
Okay.
that's in Arabic, but it's in Chinese script. This was done by the famous Chinese Muslim calligrapher Haji Noordin Mi Guangjiang.
Wow.
The first half of his name is Arabic, and his last half of his name is Chinese. Kind of like you,
Wow.
right?
Yeah,
Omar Ting,
it is.
right? Literally, he is the most famous calligrapher in the world right now. He is Hui Muslim. He's not Uyghur, but he's Hui Muslim. I think he lives in Hanan or Hebei. I think he lives like in central China, and his calligraphy is
Oh
known the world
man.
over for being so beautiful because it's
Yeah.
Arabic, but it looks like it's Chinese, but
Yeah.
it's obviously not. It's the Arabic. It's
Yeah,
Arabic letters.
he definitely it's like a fusion language right there.
Yeah. So he's one of the Chinese Muslims, and we don't talk enough about Chinese Muslims in this world. And
Yeah.
the story of them is fascinating. Like there have been Muslims in China for well over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
That logo, bring it up again for one
Okay.
second. I have one last comment. Do you want to guess what it's in the shape of? It looks like a
Which
picture of?
man, I was gonna say like a some kind of flying bird. Uh
Okay. Yes. Keep
yeah.
going with that.
I don't
You
know.
want to guess what kind of bird?
A rooster. I don't.
Almost. You're almost there.
I
You're
can't
almost
see
there.
your face, so I don't know how you reacted to that. I can't see. I see what the audience sees right now.
Oh,
Um,
okay, gotcha.
damn, a crane? No, yeah, no,
Keep
it's a
going.
vulture. Fuck.
No, 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 no.
That would be
I do not want to
insulting
be a
you.
vulture.
No, I'm just trying to from what clues would give it away? You know what? How am I gonna get warmer on this? I know it has
Well,
feathers and a wing and
you just gave yourself a clue.
yeah,
Warmer,
yeah, warmer. Well, god damn it. Uh,
warmer, fire.
oh, a phoenix?
Yes,
Okay,
there we
there we go.
go.
All right.
So 5 years ago, I met him at a local Muslim convention,
Yeah.
Islamic convention here in Houston,
Okay.
and he was just there as part of like a tour.
Yeah.
And I told him, "Hey, can you write my name in Arabic, but put it
Yeah.
in the shape of a phoenix?" And he said,
Oh,
"Okay."
wow.
And on the
Oh,
spot, in like
shit.
less than a minute, he drew that.
Wow.
And
Okay.
up until
Wow.
now, up until this year, it was just been sitting in my dresser as a
Okay.
scroll. It's a little
Yeah.
scroll. And I was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute,
It
what
looks
should
like
my logo be?
it's a
Because part
phoenix.
of marketing
Yeah.
is having a good logo, something that people can easily catch the eye and remember it.
Yeah.
And it's been sitting in my dresser this entire time, all these years. So I
Wow.
made that on my logo, and that's on my all my business cards
That's
is my
cool.
logo.
That's
And
cool.
the clients love to hear this story
Yeah.
because they love to hear how I mix my practice. Like part of my practice is estate planning, but I really specialize in Islamic wills. I literally
Okay.
published a paper last year in the state bar talking about how you can make an Islamic will that's compliant with both Sharia
Okay.
and the state law. And so that's how I mix my faith, but then also my love of Chinese culture. I made that joke in our chat about how I kind of see myself as an egg tart. I'm brown on
Yeah.
the outside, I'm yellow on the inside.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's one
yeah,
way to
okay, so is
explain
it
it.
I mean it may not even be useful to go down this path because like we might just lose 100% of the audience that we would even listen this far, but I mean, just from my like above level Googling, right? Of I should know, but like I'm a little bit ignorant about the Muslim side of my family. I don't really be so I wasn't raised in with any religion, so I'm not religious myself. But as far as it applies to estate planning legally versus the what they're doing with their religion, from how you present it, there's like a clash, and you're here to kind of help people navigate those waters. Is that what you do, or yeah?
Exactly. That's literally
Okay.
what I do. Like a good chunk. I mean, I'll do wills for anyone, Muslim or not. Obviously, like I can't discriminate.
Yeah, yeah.
But when Muslims do their wills, like and I'll definitely send you my paper later. It's actually not a very long paper. It's like 10 pages, and I've had like non-attorneys read it, and
Uh-huh.
to them like it's just crystal clear. So
Okay.
that's I guess tooting my own horn a little bit.
All right,
But I guess
cool.
one example is that when it comes to the religion does have a lot of rules as to how people are to basically get assets from an estate when someone dies.
Mm-hmm.
We have slightly different rules as to who is included as an heir and who is not included as an heir.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those rules are controversial. Some of those rules are not.
Yeah.
Some of those rules are very similar to the exact same rules you find in American jurisprudence. Like,
Okay.
for example, there's something called the Slayer Rule. The Slayer Rule in American jurisprudence says that you cannot inherit from an estate if you caused the death or if you murdered the person from whose estate you would get stuff from. So
The
you
Slayer
can't
rule. Yeah.
you can't kill your dad
Oh,
and
yeah.
then expect to inherit from his estate. Like you can't do that, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
for example,
but
right?
are you sure? Because there's this true crime show called Game of Thrones where that's exactly how wealth is passed down, and I saw it on TV. That's what I would assume because
That's not
I believe
no
it.
wait no
I'm kidding.
like hey, this is a democracy. Keep that in mind.
Okay,
This is
so
a
I mean,
democracy.
is the Slayer rule, is that a an actual law, or is this on the religion side, or both?
Both, and
It's
that's the thing.
both, yeah.
So that's an example of something that you find in the Islamic faith that's
Yeah.
in one of the rules, but you also happen to find it in the
Yeah.
American jurisprudence.
Okay.
So that's an example where things overlap. But an
Yeah.
example of a clash is, for example, and this is what I'm about to say is controversial,
Yeah.
but so between brother and sister,
Yeah.
in American jurisprudence, normally by default, all the children of the person that died get equal shares. And this is if
Yeah.
you don't have a will, right? This is the
Yeah.
intestacy rules by default if you don't have a will.
Yeah.
All the children are treated equally in terms of their shares.
Yeah.
But in Islam, the share of a son is twice that of a daughter. So it's a
Okay.
2-to-1 ratio. And
Yeah.
people who obviously don't understand the reasons for this will say, well, that's an example of Islam being sexist right there
Yeah.
and being discriminatory towards women.
Okay.
To which I would say, well, I have explanation. for that.
Okay.
There are reasons for that.
Okay.
Um, then another thing is where, well, I would counter with, well, consider that in American jurisprudence, if a person wanted to,
Uh-huh.
they could completely exclude all of their daughters from their will, and the court can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
So, kind of cuts both ways. If
Yeah.
you want to accuse my religion of being sexist,
Yeah.
I could accuse your system of allowing sexism by the
Yeah.
fact that I can exclude someone by virtue of them being female.
Okay. So the religion doesn't permit for that then?
The religion doesn't allow you to exclude an heir just because they're a female.
Okay. Okay. So there are some things both ways. You know, if they're gonna present one of the worst examples, you can counter it with, something in on the other side. Gotcha.
Yeah, and there's plenty of scenarios where the women amongst the heirs could actually be getting more than the male heirs. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of math involved. Like one thing I love about when I talk to people about Islamic estate planning, both Muslims and non-Muslims, is that hey, because all of these rules about who gets what and all these ratios, and there are certain caps as to how much you can donate to charity from an estate, because you can't donate your estate to charity. You can't pull a Jeff Bezos, or you can't pull a Bill Gates or a
Yeah.
Warren Buffett. You can't do that in Islam.
Yeah.
You have to leave it at least minimum 2/3 of your estate to your heirs.
Wow.
Um, there's just a lot of math involved. Because of all those rules and that math, that
Yeah.
is actually the origin of algebra,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
There's like the great scholar Al-Khwarizmi, like he came up with algebra
Okay.
because he needed to find out the shares of an estate.
Yeah.
Like, and the fact that mankind owes algebra to Islamic estate planning and the laws of intestate succession from the
Wow.
Quran,
Wow.
right? Without algebra, you wouldn't have algorithms, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have electronics, mathematics, so on and so forth. So some credit is due to my faith. I would argue.
Okay. No, you make a good
So
argument. Yeah. Well, let me. While you were talking about all that, I was wondering. So outside of being a really good marketing branding idea to set you apart from anybody else that's even in the same niche, then how else does the wushu mentality carry forward in not just the marketing but also the way that you do work and just
So
beyond the front end?
I'd say there's two ways. One
Yeah.
is making me more of a disciplined person. I think one reason that a lot of parents send their kids to martial arts
Yeah.
is to instill a sense of code of ethics and discipline into their children, and that's
Okay.
very much true. I'd say that having discipline with my time, being very efficient with my time,
Yeah.
with my work. So it's if work has to get done, it's gonna get done, and I'm not gonna be lazy around it. In the
Okay.
same way with my training, I can't afford to be lazy. If I get lazy in class, Shifu's gonna get mad at me.
Yeah.
He's like gonna Mo, get up. What are you doing? Go faster. Jump higher. Kick faster. In the same way with my practice, if a client needs something done, they need something done. I can't dilly dally.
Okay.
And so my client can't always be there to hit me from behind like my master does. So I have to have that self discipline to get work done, because I don't have a supervising attorney reminding me to get stuff done. I have to do
Mhm.
it all by myself. But martial arts has taught me that.
Okay.
The second thing is that um a lot of times, you do have situations where attorneys don't do everything from their clients like they're supposed to. Like
Uh-huh.
thinking of it from an ethics perspective.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when people are on their knees and they're looking for an attorney that can help solve their problems,
Yeah.
whether they need to sue someone or they're being sued.
Yeah.
And I've represented people on both sides, like in small claims cases. I love
Yeah.
small claims court. It's a great place to practice. On
The
both plaintiffs and defendants.
stakes aren't that high.
Actually, in Texas, as of September, do you know how much you can sue for in small claims court now in Texas?
No, tell
You
me.
can you can you can sue for up to $20,000 in
Oh
small
my
claims
God.
court,
Okay, gotcha.
and it's crazy. Like that's a lot of money.
It
And in
is.
small claims court, the rules of evidence don't apply unless the judge says they do.
Wow.
It's like a Wild West kind of sorta. It's
Really?
crazy.
How
Yeah.
and why is that? I mean, it's not to go off on too much of a tangent.
It's to allow for there to be more accessibility for claims that are considered meritorious, but not frivolous or as requiring as many legal resources, quote unquote. Like there's a difference between a landlord who needs to get back, $1,000 in rent, and someone who's suing for being hit by an 18-wheeler. Like those are two different worlds,
Yeah.
right? Those are both meritorious cases, but some cases are more serious than others. That's why small claims court exists.
I
And it's
see.
also more accessible because in small claims court, you don't need to be represented by an attorney.
Okay, gotcha.
That's why they always sometimes they call it the people's courts or justice of the peace courts.
or Judge
It,
Judy, right?
Judge Judy is actually kind of legitimate, not
Yeah.
because it's an actual court, but
Yeah.
because it's actually an arbitration proceeding, and you
Okay.
actually agree to be bound by the arbitration,
Yeah, she
because
just
it's
makes
still
it
considered, it's a
entertaining.
tribunal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
she
right.
just makes it entertaining, but her rulings are actually binding on the
Yeah.
parties.
Wow.
So
Wow.
people forget that it's not all scripted. Like, those are real proceedings, and
Yeah.
people have decided to go to arbitration as
Yeah.
opposed to going in front of a real judge.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But like I was saying, like, people they feel like they're downtrodden. They want an attorney to fight for them.
Mhm.
Well, I'm literally a martial artist. I literally fight for myself in the ring or in
Yeah.
the martial arts school.
Yeah.
So I say, hey, let me fight for you. And so because I literally know how to fight. Like, a lot of times when I tell a client, like, I have clients all telling me all the time. They tell me in their first consultation. I've had clients in front of me telling me about their situation. Say, hey, I am more than willing to fight for you. And I go on tangents, kind of like we are right now. I go on tangents telling them about what I do in martial arts class. I tell them the same lessons that my very master teaches me myself, and I impart them to my client as if I'm the master and my client is the student.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
tell them, hey, you cannot give up. You have to keep trying. You have to keep fighting. You got to keep practicing, remembering certain basic principles. And this is how we're going to win your case, right? The fight's not over until you truly give up. And sometimes I have to be not just, a client's attorney, but I'm also their counselor at law. Like, you've seen that phrase, attorneys and counselors at law.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
take both of those terms very seriously, as a martial artist as well. I'm not just here to give you legal advice. I'm here to pick you up, dust the dust off your shoulders,
Yeah.
pick you up and make you remember that the sun will rise tomorrow.
Okay.
Don't give up hope. And I feel like, that's kind of also why the phoenix is my mascot or my symbol, because I kind of light the fire, your torch, from the wings of the phoenix. I want to inspire my clients to remember, hey, don't give up hope. And like, whenever I do that, my clients, they always, like, they stop crying. They always feel like they walk out of the consultation very inspired, very empowered, that, hey, I actually have a chance at winning my case.
Well, I think that's incredible, just branding from the top to the bottom. And what about on a more technical level? And you had mentioned this, so I haven't researched it much. How does estate planning relate to, let's say, dating and sex? And no one would ever, I wouldn't like connect the two at all, because I don't understand estate planning and what it even
Yeah.
entails.
So yeah, let's talk about some basics. So a lot of times when we talk about estate planning, we're trying to figure out, how are you accumulating your assets over time, and how eventually, when you pass away, when you leave this world, because dying and death is not a question of if, but when. We will all one day die and leave this world.
Yeah.
So the question is, in all likelihood, you're not going to lose everything by the time you die. You're not going to lose all your property. Your bank accounts are not all going to go zero, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? So someone's going to get your stuff when you die.
Yeah.
The question is, who? And
Yeah.
are you certain that the people who you want to get your stuff and all your money when you die will actually get it?
Yeah.
So the way it relates in, say, sex and dating is, for example, with sex, right? Well, a natural consequence of sex normally is, there's always the possibility of a pregnancy.
Yeah.
And you may or may not know whether or not a child is born, whether it's in wedlock or out of wedlock.
Yeah.
In estate planning, we have to account for children. Now, you might think you know all your children that you had, but every now and then you find a guy who doesn't think that they impregnated a woman back in their college days, and then they find out on their doorstep, they find out they have a son or a daughter. Like, it happens from time to time, man.
It really happens.
Yeah. And so
Damn.
if you make a will,
Yeah.
and then later on it's found out that there's a child either that you didn't know of,
Yeah.
or a child that you did know of was born,
Yeah.
but obviously could not have been factored into your mindset when you made your will.
Yeah.
The court, I think in most states, if not all states, the probate court will actually find a way through the laws of intestacy
Yeah.
to create or carve out a share for
Wow.
for that heir, right?
Wow.
This is why when I'm probating an estate next week,
Yeah.
and part of the probate process is that you always, even though you represent your client who is applying to, create the estate on behalf of their deceased relative, the court has to appoint what's called a guardian ad litem. The guardian ad litem is to go out and confirm that there are no unknown heirs in there. So in the off chance that the person that you think wasn't going around having sex and having, unplanned children that they only found out later, or that no one found out later, and it's on the other side of the railroad tracks, literally.
Yeah.
Well, the guardian ad litem, that's their job to find out.
Yeah.
On sex and then dating in general, I mean, I guess marriage, and then ultimately where I would bring it up about is that, be careful about who you marry, because in this country, if you marry the wrong person and you later divorce that person, they can be taking up a lot of your stuff. I mean, you work in a divorce firm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see the stories of like you'll make a lot of money, but divorce is costly.
Yeah.
And if you don't, so that's why in my practice, I actually encourage couples. I'm trying to really target young couples recently, or people
Yeah.
before they get married.
Yeah.
Sign a prenup or a post-nuptial agreement. And especially if you live in Texas or California like you do,
Yeah.
we are community property states, which means that when you get married, your spouse has a 1/2 interest in all the property that's acquired during the marriage.
Yeah.
This includes your wages, your income,
Yeah.
any property that you buy, so on and so forth. The assumption is that if you got it into your hands during the marriage,
Yeah.
it is community property, and your spouse has a 1/2 interest in it.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, hey, is this the kind of person that I can trust that will, not screw me over in the divorce? Because if they do, they can take at least half your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even more, right? Because it can be adjusted. But if you sign like a prenup or postnup, you can actually waive the community property presumption.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can actually get rid of that 50-50 rule, where it's like, hey, you only take from the marriage what you brought into it. And anything that we bought during the marriage, we have to sign separate agreements or other stuff to prove that how it should be properly divided, so on and so forth. So that's one example. It's like estate planning is affected by a sex and dating and vice versa. Even in dating, I mean, as you go around dating, ask yourself, hey, is this the kind of person that's going to help me accrue wealth over my lifetime, or is this the kind of person that's actually going to be, a draining upon my resources? I know that sounds kind of wrong, but there's a reason why certain terms, as sexist as they mean, but terms like gold digger, I mean, it's there for a reason. I mean, there are genuinely both men and women who are out there just to date and marry people just so they can later break up or divorce them.
Look, man, can I just say what's on my mind? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, like, well, while I would have to agree with all of this advice, it's like, come on, when is a guy actually going to follow this advice? He's just gonna be like,
That's why you talk to me, man. I'm not just your estate planning lawyer, attorney. I'm like your wingman attorney. Like, dude, like I gotta let you know, dude, this woman, she's gonna screw over your estate. She's gonna take everything.
no.
But on the other hand, I mean, we have to realize that we live in a country where you can date someone for as long as you want.
Yeah.
You can love your girlfriend just as much, if not more, than some men love their wives. But the mere fact that she's your girlfriend does not bestow upon her any rights in the event that you die without a will.
Yeah.
So if you really want her to get stuff from your will, but you don't want to marry her, then you got to make a will and put her name down and say that she gets some stuff.
Yeah.
So if you really love your girlfriend or your fiance, right?
Yeah.
I know that you recently got engaged. Congrats, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know when you guys are actually going to go to the courthouse and get married.
Yeah,
But,
it's been very far in the future. It's like this COVID thing is really fucking putting a wrench in everything.
Yeah, but who knows when you could die? You could die tomorrow, and your girlfriend would have no rights to anything.
Well, god damn it, you're right, man. It's time to live life to the fullest. Fuck,
Yeah,
if
live
be
life to
dead
the fullest.
Fuck tomorrow.
Write a will. No, that's one way I tell people. Is to, like, it is an anxiety-inducing discussion to bring up death when I try to sell my services and try to get people to get a will done. So I actually have to have prior conversations. And I ask people, hey, what's your business? What are your investments in? What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And then I eventually lead to the question is, so yeah, do you have a will, by the way?
Do I don't.
Exactly. That's I lead people towards that point.
Yeah.
And wait, so how do you know that the people that you want to get your stuff will actually get your stuff? A lot of times they'll say, well, I don't know. So that's how I then get to convince them, say, hey, well, we can draft you a will right away. Right? And if you still want to keep dating your girlfriend, that's fine. If you don't want to marry her, that's fine. We'll put her in the will and make sure that she gets something. I'm literally drafting wills soon for this couple. They're not going to get married anytime soon, but they love each other to death, and they've been dating for at least 3 or 4 years. And we're going to get them their wills very soon.
Well, how about this then? Out of these 3 topics, because like damn, man, who knew that estate planning had all these nuances, and I mean, that's crazy. But I mean, like I was chuckling because I'm like I'm imagining a guy at the club just checking a girl up. He's like, is this girl gonna help me accrue wealth? Like, come on. That's what's going through his head. He's like,
I mean, that's the point. I mean, honestly, at some point, like, I think even every guy, every woman, like, how long in your life are you gonna go clubbing, man?
Yeah.
Like, how many people are still going into their 40s and they're clubbing, or their late 30s and they're clubbing? Like, the clubbing scene is really only for people of certain age groups and
Yeah.
certain demographics. So let's be
Yeah.
honest. So I know that's not gonna happen in the club,
Yeah.
but later on, let's say you guys do start dating.
Yeah.
Well, then then you start taking once you start taking things seriously. Like, well, make it serious and ask yourself, hey, do I have a will? And the great thing about a will is that because it's not something you have to like record publicly every single time you update it,
Yeah.
you can literally update your will as often as you want. In theory, you could literally update and get a new will every single day or every single week. It's not a publicly recorded document, it's a private
Mm-hmm.
document. You just make a new will and then tear up all the old ones. That's
Well,
it.
how about this? Uh I picked out Daredevil because you had mentioned it. Was that just like off the cuff, or is Daredevil something that you've kind of looked up to for a while, or
I kind of,
cause
I
yeah.
kind of, I kind of do like Charlie Cox's portrayal of
Uh-huh.
Daredevil in the Daredevil series on Netflix. I really wish they had given him a season 4 and the other Defender series
Mm-hmm.
until Disney did its thing. I hate you, Mickey Mouse.
What happened with Disney? I don't follow. Yeah.
Disney bought Marvel, and
Okay, no, I
because
knew
those
about that, but I don't know what
yeah.
happened to the
So
show. Yeah.
so they took it away from Netflix. So Netflix
Okay.
could not make season
Oh, I see.
they they,
Yeah.
they
Okay.
couldn't make season 3 of Iron Fist and Luke Cage
Oh man.
because of that.
Okay.
Disney wouldn't go do it. But yeah, I kind of do like the idea of lawyer by day, warrior by night.
Okay.
That it to some extent that is what I do. And my friends have even brought it up to me. It's like, dude, Momo, are you kind of like Daredevil? I'm like, I guess I could be. I mean, I could be an egg tart, and I can also be Daredevil.
So I thought it was interesting how maybe serious you take it, that it's not like, oh, you just do it for fitness. You told me that what was the exact thing you wanted to the national USA team that you wanted to try out for?
Yeah. So I do Chinese martial arts, but I specifically train in contemporary Chinese martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
In contemporary Chinese martial arts, there's two main branches. One branch is called Sanda, also called Sancho, and it is the sport that the Chinese military is trained in,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the actual combat. It's like Chinese kickboxing is one way to say it. They have headgear and everything, and they go, no holds barred fighting.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other half, which is actually just as, if not more well known, is called Taolu.
Okay.
Taolu actually refers to forms and doing routines. You can think
Okay.
of them as like choreographed floor routines,
Okay.
is what we do. So what we're doing is very impressive. And even if we are doing fights in Taolu with another person, like a partner,
Yeah.
that's all choreographed. Like
Okay.
none of it is it's real, but it looks very real and actually borrows from actual martial arts. So I encourage everyone, the audience, to go on YouTube and look up wushu forms and look up
Okay.
either northern wushu forms or southern wushu forms. So
Okay.
the style I specifically do southern
Okay.
because of my body type. But there's also northern forms. There's Tai Chi. Then there's the miscellaneous forms like Bagua. Like have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Is that the cartoon on Netflix?
It's on Netflix now, but it's
Okay.
originally from Nickelodeon.
Okay.
So one way to imagine it, I explain it to people, is that when you think of northern style wushu, which is like called Chanchuan,
Yeah.
northern fist, that's fire bending.
Okay.
Southern style, which is Nanchuan, is earth bending.
Okay.
Tai Chi is water bending,
Yeah.
and then Bagua is air bending.
That, I
That's
mean,
literally where they got it from when they made the series.
that's more deep than I've ever heard the topic explained to me.
Yeah,
I'm that ignorant about this, that like that's the first time I've heard it even broken down further, than one level. I didn't even That's like so deep, man. I didn't know. I feel a little bit ignorant for not, even knowing anything below surface level. Now.
yeah. And so my dream is to so every other year there are tryouts to be on the national team for each country, including the U.S.
Mhm.
Because then a couple of months afterwards is Wushu Worlds. So 2019, I forget where Wushu Worlds was. I think was it in Shanghai? Like I don't remember, but I remember 2015. I think it was in Indonesia. I think in 2017 it was in Kazan, Russia.
Mhm.
And so they do it a lot of different places every other year, but though China tends to be the host very, very often. There are some international other international wushu competitions. So like Pan Am's is only the Western Hemisphere, so it's only North America, South America, and the Caribbean and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
that goes to Pan Am's. But if you're on the USA Wushu team, then you're essentially eligible to go to all these international competitions and represent the United States. Um,
Cool.
so that's kind of my dream, is to one day. I want to try out as many times as I can,
Yeah.
but to just at least 1 year and make it onto the team so I can at least compete on the world stage one day.
Dang. So you got some big aspirations in a couple different areas. Got any side hustles outside of what you're working on, if you even have free time for anything else?
So I mean, like during through all of college, right? So like I was
Yeah.
in college for like 7.5 years. Like
Yeah.
I did like 4 degrees in 7.5 years. I have no
Yeah.
idea how the hell I did it.
Wow.
I did a bachelor's, a master's, a JD, and an LLM in health law.
Yeah.
Um, and all through school, almost every single weekend during the school year, I was judging speech and debate for
Yeah.
high school students.
Okay.
And like on average, that's like 150 to $175 every single weekend for like a day and a half.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a side hustle.
Yeah.
Um, I am trying to figure out what my side hustle is going to be now. I mean, I still judge a few tournaments here and there, but
Yeah.
one thing I like being an attorney now is having my Saturdays back, because like the money
Okay.
I can make at a debate tournament, I can make that money back in 1 or 2 hours if I want. I
Yeah.
don't need to spend 20 or something hours at a tournament.
Yeah.
But my side hustle, I am actually looking into starting my own apparel line
Okay.
either influence or goes in tandem with the firm.
Okay.
So one of my goals is to eventually get kind of like I have this team jacket right here from my wushu
Oh.
team my
Yeah.
university days.
Yeah.
I'm actually considering so I got these silks from China. I got these custom silks from China, and I had a
Yeah.
photo shoot done a couple of weeks ago. The jackets that I want to make for my clients or my fans would be basically inspired by the silks I got, and that's
Okay.
gonna be for later. People are gonna see it, but I just gave you a little sneak peek of an idea.
Yeah.
But I am that's one project in the works, and I got some other apparel stuff in the works that people are gonna like one day.
Okay.
But I'm working with suppliers. My goal is to at least within the next 6 months or so
Mm-hmm.
have it like really like up and out there like on Shopify and stuff.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad I asked. And while we're still on the topic of entrepreneurship and side hustles, how does that relate to what you can do for startup founders or existing businesses? Because you said there is an aspect of estate planning that ties directly or indirectly with entrepreneurship.
Right. So a lot of times when people have they start up their business, and so
Mm-hmm.
the business itself can it can own assets, it has money in of itself, but then
Mm-hmm.
you yourself own the business and indirectly own the assets of that business, even though
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously the corporate shield. Um, Proper estate planning from the beginning would ensure that you know as that business grows, that you correctly maintain the shares that you have and figure out, hey, because estate planning also factors in taxation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a good estate planner would obviously make sure that you are working with the right CPA to help make sure that your startup limits its tax liability from the get-go,
Mm-hmm.
so that way you guys can keep more wealth, and that wealth can then be reinvested and properly accrued, so that way later on as you get into your 30s and 40s, you have more wealth to go off it. Any estate planner who doesn't properly make sure that you have a good CPA isn't doing a good job. So part of my job is making sure that my clients are not just getting good legal advice, that they're getting good tax advice. Because
Mm-hmm.
honestly, every now and then I meet someone who's starting up a business or has a small business, and they don't have a CPA or a local CPA, and I don't know why that is. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you want to make money, but you're not taking advantage of every outlet you can to save that money. Like part
Mm-hmm.
of entrepreneurship is that you are taking a lot of risks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're incurring a lot of costs in the beginning for future revenue that you don't have, that's going to be realized, that you're taking on a lot of risk and a lot of loans.
Mm-hmm.
Because the debts that you have that you take up, especially as an entrepreneur, well, just because you die tomorrow, those debts don't magically go away,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your creditors can still come after your estate. But if you properly plan things by putting maybe certain things in a trust,
Mm-hmm.
well, then your creditors most likely cannot touch what's in the trust, but they can touch what's in your estate. So estate planning does care about, having the will, which then goes into probate, and then in probate they open up the estate.
Mm-hmm.
The probate court normally cannot touch what's inside a trust.
Mm-hmm.
So we figure out as an entrepreneur how much money, how much assets we can actually divert towards the trust,
Mm-hmm.
and in such a way that your creditors, in the event that you pass away, or even when you're still alive, that they can't touch it in the event that you die or you go into bankruptcy, but we can protect what's in the trust.
So what are the costs associated with starting it and maintaining it? Because I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but I think most people will assume it's going to come with some costs because yeah, it takes a lawyer to do it and maintain it for you.
Yeah. So there are two things I have to say to that. So
Yeah.
first of all, so the ethics rule actually normally prevents an attorney from openly advertising or saying prices. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this interview is going to go online, so I can't really say prices for
Yeah.
one reason. It could also create
Yeah.
sometimes antitrust issues, right?
Yeah.
Because when an
Yeah.
attorney hears about it, they're like, oh, so is
Okay.
that the price I should set? And they're like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
creates whole
I see.
issues.
Yeah. Well,
Number
I
one.
I
Number
did
two,
I did no innocent question, guys. My
no, no,
bad.
no, it's okay. Don't worry. You're okay, man.
I'm
But the
just
second thing
testing
is,
you, actually. We
yeah.
were just
But the
testing you.
second thing
I was
is
trying to see
that,
if you'd crack.
yeah. But the second issue is that the complexity of an estate can tell you an idea of just how much more it's going to cost you. Like if I'm doing a will for someone where they literally only own one house and one car, but they don't own a business,
Mm-hmm.
they don't own even any stocks or bonds. Like they maybe have a 401k and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes not even. That's going to be a lot simpler and going to take a lot less time
Mm-hmm.
and arguably cheaper
Mm-hmm.
than setting up an estate for someone that has 401k, stocks and bonds. They have maybe life insurance or annuities involved. They own a
Mm-hmm.
business. They own
Mm-hmm.
multiple rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So
so on,
it
so
depends on
forth.
how complex it is. It's gonna be case by
Yeah,
case. Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
just so case by case, and so the prices also have to be
Yeah. Of
case by
course.
case. Yeah,
Yeah.
because some people they only need a will. Some people need a
Yeah.
will and a trust,
I mean, do you
and they're different kinds of
I
trusts.
imagine you say it could be this much, so there's like a deposit. This is my hourly fee, and you know, do you take it or leave it or something more creative? I don't know. Yeah.
Some so a lot of times when it comes to documents, I know a lot of attorneys, and I learned
Yeah.
it from them. A lot of
Yeah.
times we only charge like a flat fee. So a lot of
I
times
see. Oh,
the
so to
cost can be
make it easy on the
yeah, it's actually
client.
very
Yeah.
transparent. I want to say
Okay.
a lot of times for estate planning, especially estate planning packages, when you get a will,
Yeah.
a trust if necessary, um, a power of attorney, a directed to physicians,
Yeah.
designation of where you're going to be buried or cremated, things like those kinds of things. A lot of times an attorney can tell you upfront
Mm-hmm.
what the one-time flat fee is.
Okay.
So it's not one of those things where it's going to rack you up a bunch of hours and you get a big bill later and you're like, holy crap.
Okay. No, that I mean that's same for bankruptcies. There's just a flat fee, you know, and you know if there's profit, that's up to the lawyer. But I think that makes it easy for the it makes things a lot simpler, you know. Just
Oh, it
if you're trying to
does.
run a business, like trying to sit there and customize, and then you forget who what you quoted, and yeah, no. So I agree with that. Some niches you probably can't do it that way, but I like the simple things in life. So I would rather, you
Yeah,
know,
I
yeah,
prefer,
just keep
yeah.
it simple.
And that incentivizes me to be as efficient as possible
Yeah,
because if I
yeah,
know I can't bill by the hour, I
yeah,
have no reason to be wasting, 10 more hours
yeah, yeah,
on drafting a will or a trust
yeah,
than I need to, right?
yeah,
So that's where,
yeah.
good document automation and comes
Speaking
into
of
play.
that, man, perfect time to introduce this question, 'cause I was gonna save it for later, but now it makes sense to ask it. Is how has COVID affected your business? And what reminded me to ask that question now is that, you know, in bankruptcy, a lot of things have gotten better for the attorney because you used to have to go to the courthouse physically. Now you can imagine they had to find a way around that. So laws have changed overnight in the bankruptcy industry. You can show up via Zoom like we're doing now, and so it's gotten more efficient. So there's like been some positives from COVID, has made things more efficient,
Yeah.
has forced people to think outside of the box, out, you know, change status quo. And then so even after the pandemic's over with, I think some of these things are going to stay because people are like, well, wow, this is so efficient. Why didn't we do this before?
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen here in Texas. I've been to, I, don't, I forget how many times I've been to court over Zoom now, but
Mm-hmm.
every single time I've been to court as an attorney now,
Mm-hmm.
it's been through Zoom. I've yet to have
Wow.
to go to court in person a single time, and
Wow.
it's honestly it's a lot better for my schedule. I
Yeah.
can literally wake up in my PJs at freaking 8:30, change into
Wow.
my suit in 5 minutes, and be ready for court in like at 9 a.m.
That's
if I
amazing.
have to. And it's a lot better than having to wake up early, get my coffee, change my clothes, get into the car, warm up the car, drive 30 minutes to downtown to the courthouse, find a place to park, walk from the parking spot into the courthouse, get through the security line, go up the stairs or the elevator to the courtroom. Like, dude, forget all that. We don't
I
need that
mean,
anymore.
like, thank God, because I thought I was the only one who was enjoying some of this COVID ripple effects. No, not to insult people that have tragedies in their life, but like, damn, this is some, yeah, like getting to work from home, not having to go to court, deal with going through a security scanner and getting patted down. Like, damn, man, not having to wait in the smelly elevator. Like, wow, like
Yeah,
who would want to go back to pre-COVID? You
yeah,
know?
and because there's so many different courts for different things, like you might have to go to district court, downtown, and then a couple blocks over, or maybe even a couple
Yeah,
miles over, is the probate court, and then you got to go back to the federal courthouse if you have bankruptcy. Like I know some attorneys, they're able to go into 2 or 3 different courts in one day and not charge their client a single dime for travel time because they just go show up to court through
yeah,
Zoom. So it
and
actually saves the clients money too. It's not just about the
wow,
lawyers like, oh my
yeah.
gosh, I don't have to drive anymore and I get to work from home.
It's just
The
more
client's
fit.
like,
Yeah,
hey, my attorney is able to show up to court a lot faster, and I can almost
yeah,
guarantee my attorney is going to show up to court. Because every
yeah,
now and then you have clients that'll complain, dude, my attorney didn't even show up to court for me.
yeah.
That happens.
It didn't even occur to me that this was a wide scale, that probably the entire legal industry is like, wow, this has, I mean, like maybe like this could have been the difference between, a one man shop on the verge of profitability. This could mean that like he stays in business, like if it's a matter of just squeezing in a couple extra clients, being more efficient, being able to be in 2 or 3 places at one time so you can do more deals through your pipeline. Like this could be huge, and I mean I think it is huge. Like I'm kind of living through it right now, like that we just wrote an article not too long ago that was one of the benefits. So that's crazy. It's like hearing it from you, I didn't really think that, oh, it must be all lawyers, because I just learning it, like this is the first time I've been introduced to bankruptcy.
Yeah, I mean that's and as a side note for the audience, like I actually used to work at the bankruptcy court myself. I was a clerk one summer back in
Uh-huh.
2017. I clerked for Judge Marvin Isker. He later went on to be the judge that swore me in when I became licensed as an attorney early this year.
Oh
So
wow, do you
he's
remember
really
you?
like oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
He's
yeah,
like a big
okay.
mentor to me. It
Yeah.
also happens to be that he himself is also involved in the speech and debate community. So
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I've actually been to some tournaments
Oh,
where
got
he's
you.
he's one of the tournament directors.
Oh
So
wow.
it's a little bit of nice way to
Yeah.
say hello. Say hey, good to see you again.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think he can't wait until the day I'm actually practicing in front of him. So
Yeah.
I am considering adding bankruptcy to my practice
Okay.
sometime next year maybe. So
Wow,
that would be
okay.
interesting just to be able to see Judge Isker. But
Yeah.
Judge Isker is quite interesting. Like if you look up articles about Judge Isker and Judge Brown in the Southern District of Texas, um, they have been very remarkable in how they have made the Southern District of Texas so much more efficient that a lot
Wow.
of companies, when it's time to declare bankruptcy, they want to declare and file for bankruptcy specifically in our district and not in
Wow.
other federal districts. Like
Wow. True
it's
story,
hard to explain
guys. True
exactly what they did,
story. Wow.
but they did some panels. Like if you there's some articles about there. It's in Houston Chronicle as well. And Judge Isker, like he is, I'm not just saying this because I was his clerk, but like I wrote an opinion on in my time there as a clerk, and I can't tell you, like I went to at least 10 different drafts of the same opinion because he believes in things being crystal clear and being pristine and perfect. Like
Yeah.
when it comes to analysis, this guy does not want to drop a beat or leave any stone unturned,
Yeah.
and he will literally criticize you with so many pins and needles you can feel like a pincushion after
Yeah.
he's done with you.
Yeah.
He's also very jovial. He's like a gentle giant.
All right.
The man is like 6 feet tall at least, I think.
Wow. How
It's
old is
crazy.
he? I mean, he sounds like he's fucking fierce still.
He's like he's in his 60s. So the
Okay.
interesting thing about being a bankruptcy judge is that even though it's a federal judge,
Yeah.
they don't actually get nominated by the president and then confirmed by the Senate.
Okay.
What happens is that in every single federal district, the judges which actually are confirmed by the Senate, they actually vote like on a panel as to who the tax court, magistrate court, and the bankruptcy court judges are going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and those judges are on fixed terms.
Hmm.
Judges that have been confirmed by the Senate have lifetime terms. They can serve
Mm.
until they die if they want to, or
Mm.
until they resign. Where bankruptcy judges, I think they serve on terms of like 14 years or something,
Mm.
and those terms can be renewed though. So
I
if
see.
they're doing a good job,
Yeah.
their colleagues can just vote to keep them in.
Yeah. So let me so like I probably should know, but the reason I don't is I just do marketing, so it's like I don't need to know anything on the operational side, right? But one thing that is completely I'm ignorant of is that you said bankruptcy judges are federal. Like that's, I mean, you say it because you deal with it every day. For me, it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Is that that's like nationwide. That's just how the system works. It's a federal,
Yeah.
so it's a
So
yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't
yeah,
know if it was a state or, maybe you can
it's
treat me like a
it's
noob, which that's what I
yeah,
am.
no
I was like,
problem.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of both.
yeah,
So the when I was there in the bankruptcy court as a summer intern, they actually spent a day like a luncheon where they actually told us about the history of the bankruptcy laws.
yeah.
The fact of the matter is that the founding fathers of this country hated debt. They hated debt with a passion. That's one reason that they
Uh,
wanted to leave England, because obviously once they broke away from their former colonizer, they didn't owe them any money anymore, right? Like the wealthy white
Damn.
elitist men that founded this country, they hated debt and having to pay back the people that they owed money to,
Dude,
right?
that's a crazy story, man. That's like that
Yeah.
should be
So they
the
hated
it,
debt.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's specifically in the Constitution. It empowers Congress to create laws about bankruptcy. It's there from day one of our
Mm,
from the founding of our country in those documents.
that's
And so
crazy.
that's why Congress create laws about bankruptcy. The
Yeah,
most recent major reform of the bankruptcy code was back in 2005. I mean, there
yeah,
have been might be some small changes here and there, mostly through case law. But
yeah,
the bankruptcy code is the federal code. But the federal code is kind of like a national standard that
yeah.
applies everywhere. But at the same time, there is some conflict because it gets affected by property rights. But property rights are primarily formulated by state law, right?
Oh,
So, for
okay.
example, in states where the property law is under a community property jurisdiction like Texas or
Yeah,
California,
yeah,
may get you a different outcome than a different jurisdiction like say New York, which is
yeah,
not a community property state. So you have to apply both the same federal bankruptcy code and two different
yeah,
states in federal court, but maybe have different outcomes under the same law
yeah,
because the property rules are different or the
yeah,
rules around divorce are different.
yeah,
So that's why one reason why bankruptcy can be so fascinating is
yeah.
that it is federal law, but it can be very much influenced by where you're practicing it in the country.
It's so complicated, man. That's why, I mean, that's where good attorneys earn their fee, man, is that they help you keep track of all this. The more complicated it gets, man, you don't want to, the same way as the judge is paying attention to all the details. He's just training you on what you need to be doing, and
Yeah, I mean that's one reason. Like again, I'm so thankful to Judge Isker for his mentorship. Is that he
yeah,
showed me like honestly when I got the internship, it was just like on a whim. Like my counselors randomly told me, "Hey, by the way, there's a judge looking for interns. Go and apply. Who knows, you might get it." And I
mm-hmm,
literally walked into the interview, and they pretty much said that, "Yeah, dude, you have it. If you want it, you have it." And I was like,
mm-hmm.
"Oh, okay." I didn't even know that the judge himself was a speech and debate alum, but I guess he must have seen that in my resume and then
Wow,
liked me right off the bat.
he's like
And
much respect. He's like, we come from similar backgrounds. He's like, let's give
yes,
this kid a
yeah.
shot. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's literally what it was like. And he taught me some hard lessons. There were some times where he was definitely tough on me. Like
yeah,
I felt like I was gonna get my ass handed to me. But
yeah.
in the end, it was definitely one of the best, like I guess, internships I've had in my life was under Judge Isker.
Judge
Again,
Isker. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, my
um,
yeah, one of my buddies, his family runs a personal injury law firm in Dallas, Fears Nachawati, and I think he was in I think he's University of Houston Law School. Is that where you
that's my
said you
law
went?
school.
Okay,
That's
cool,
where I
cool.
went to law
Yeah,
school
yeah,
as well.
cool. And then his first job out of college. I don't know if this name rings a bell for you. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but his first job out of law school was at Enron, where okay, yeah, and then like all it
Bernie
was
Madoff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he was like all super excited, and then that shit happened, and it's like, oh, because it was like a really good job, and then like the fucking company evaporates. It's like, fuck.
The bankruptcy, yeah. But
Yeah,
that's one reason, like that's why all these big companies, because of stories like Enron, um, other oil and gas, giants, even healthcare giants, so on
yeah,
and so forth. If they can find a way to file in the Southern District, they can because
yeah,
it's bad enough if the company goes under, but if you want to have a good chance of being able to salvage something from the company, whether you're a creditor of the company or you're the debtor itself,
mm-hmm,
um, you got to try to find a way to file in the Southern District because they will get you through fast.
mm-hmm,
And they'll get your problem solved a lot faster and more efficiently and equitably than a lot of other districts probably could. Again, thanks to Judge Isker, Judge
mm-hmm.
Brown,
So just
and Judge Botham.
not just Texas in general, but your specific county is a business friendly just area to be. That's the yeah,
Yeah, I live in Harris County.
yeah,
Oh, no, I don't live in Harris County. I mean, I live in Fort Bend County, just went
yeah,
over. But yeah, Harris County. If you've probably heard of Harris County,
mm-hmm,
probably a lot in the news, especially whenever it when a lot of times when people hear about Houston, it's
Yeah.
when it's hurricane season.
Yeah.
So when it floods, obviously Harris County gets a lot of bad flooding,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires good leadership to be able to survive that flooding, because there's always a body count. There's always people
Yeah.
that lose their
Yeah.
homes and their cars. It's really unfortunate, but good
Mm-hmm.
leadership helps us make it through, especially when Hurricane Harvey hit in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Good leadership is how a lot of people were able to survive that.
Wow. And yeah, it's sad that to see it on the news. You know, I haven't I was born and raised in Dallas, Arlington to be specific, but I've been in California the last 20 years where we might have an earthquake or two, but it's not as I mean, and I've lived through some tornadoes and that like across the street someone's roof got taken off. Like it's been, tornadoes some scary shit, man. I'll tell you that. No, like yeah, earthquake, the ground shakes and maybe some glass dishes break, but like dang, man, tornadoes is something else. I gotta
Yeah, it's
say.
like, sometimes, it's one of those things that, if you didn't believe in God before, well, that might be the thing that makes you
Yeah,
believe in God. It's
yeah,
like, oh my God.
yeah. Like it's been taking trees out of their roots. Like what? Like where did my tree go? It's been here for my whole life. The tree's gone. Uh,
Literally getting uprooted.
for real.
Um,
Uh
um, but yeah, I remember one of the things that we wanted to talk about.
huh.
I want to get a little bit on track because I really want to talk about this, is how estate planning affects a lot of things, but that includes racism.
Yes, yes. You read my
Yes.
mind, man. I
Yeah.
that's the last
So
thing we didn't touch on.
yeah, so when it comes to, so a lot of times when people think about racism, they think of very bare bones, tip of the iceberg racism, a
Mhm.
classic scenario of like someone that, maybe a racist white guy that doesn't like black people because they think that
Mhm.
all black people are thugs or
Mhm.
are uneducated or poor or something. Like that kind of racism very much still does
Mhm.
exist in this country. Like
Okay.
it does. Like
Yeah.
I live in the South, I can tell you that, okay?
Yeah. All right.
Um, but there's also a very like structural racism.
Yeah.
Structural racism is, to paraphrase it, is racism where people at the top of
Yeah.
institutions, whether it's corporations or the government or certain nonprofits or special interest groups, have from behind the scenes created policies or rules or put things in place
Wow.
such that minorities or people of color
Yeah.
have become disadvantaged relative to whites, at least in the context of the United States,
Yeah.
right? One example of this is the concept of redlining.
Okay.
A very good summary of this, the audience can look it up on YouTube, is look up redlining and then Adam Ruins Everything. I think that's a great little show from like, I think it was from like not College Humor or like Comedy Central or something.
Uh-huh.
But basically what redlining was, it was this policy that was started under FDR and
Uh-huh.
lasted for a good couple decades. It basically created a red line where certain districts, where it was not good to basically loan people money, and or it's very like certain areas where, hey, we're going to loan these kinds of people better interest rate loans and not these other people. It just so happens that
Uh,
those red lines were drawn around areas where black people lived. So basically, as the main one of the main consequences from the redlining policies, which technically redlining is no longer a thing, like it's
yeah.
illegal now,
Yeah.
but some of those maps are still technically used by underwriters for home mortgages today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when basically when black people would try to get a loan to get a home and
Yeah.
they couldn't get one, then they had to stay where they were. One of the main ways that or one of the main reasons as to why people say that home ownership is part of the path to success is because, well, a home is not just a thing that you live in, it is also an asset which you can pass on
Yeah.
because it has equity when you pay down the debt on the mortgage.
Yeah.
And if you want to, you can sell that house and use that capital to either help you buy a new home or a bigger home,
Mhm.
and or to pay for your children, or that your children can get that money, and so on and so forth. It is a downstream trickle effect.
Mhm.
Well, obviously, for many generations, black people did not get that benefit as many whites did. Where whites could get better mortgage loans so they could buy
Mhm.
bigger houses, which they could then flip for a profit or then
Mm.
pass down to their children.
Mm.
And so you have some people living in homes for 2 or 3 generations, or that they sold those homes for, the inflation helped them out. And then you compare that to other black families over the same period of time that
Mhm.
did not accrue nearly as much wealth.
Mm.
So part of estate planning is to make sure that I try to, like, most of my clientele are people of color.
Mhm.
And one reason I tell them is why this is so important for minorities to be able to get ahead in society, even if they are getting ahead in other areas.
Mhm.
From a very structural point of view, it's very important that, you pass on, real estate and certain
Mhm.
other, I guess, big ticket items properly down through your wills and your trusts,
Mhm.
and that those assets are properly protected. Otherwise, your creditors or the state in some
Mhm.
instances will take those assets away, and you won't be
Mhm.
able to pass them down to
Mhm.
future generations
Mhm.
in the same way that white people were able to take advantage of white estate planning. For a long time, when people thought of wills or trusts, they normally associated it with the wealthy and or with white people.
Mhm.
But that narrative for some time has kind of changed, and I'm
Mhm.
trying to help better change that narrative and saying
Mhm.
that no, 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 this is for everyone. Everyone has a right to take advantage of this.
Mhm.
But because people don't know about it, and then it then affects whether or not people even properly know as to, hey, who does get the house. Because sometimes if you just sit on property and you don't move it, it can create problems. Like, I can tell you stories of title companies not wanting to give a house to a child, or not knowing whether or not to
Mhm.
give it, and so the
Wow.
child doesn't get the house. And like,
Dang.
there are some horror stories out there. Like, I didn't
Wow.
even know all the horror
Yeah.
stories, but
Yeah.
they're out there. And part of it is, and we're still suffering from the effects of redlining even to this day.
Mm.
Like, there have been double blind studies where African Americans are still getting, comparatively on average, uh, worse interest rates on homes,
Mhm.
for homes of the same value, even when the income of the African American applicant is the same or similar to a white applicant in the
Mhm.
exact same scenario.
Mhm.
So we're still facing the effects of that. And, if you, part of an estate planner's job is to also be aware of the real estate market,
Mhm.
and of the financial market, and how loans are, and interest rates are. My master's was in applied economics, so I learned a lot about the Federal Reserve, and about quantitative easing, and about interest rates
Mhm.
and everything.
Mhm.
So to me, that is always kind of on my mind. It's in the back of the head of the estate planner,
Mhm.
and making sure that your clients are aware of this when it comes to passing down their homes, right?
Mm.
Because when you pass down a home, the mortgage on that still attaches, right? It's not like I said, dying does not make debt magically go away.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting because there's a lot of things I'm ignorant on, and the specific forms of racism is one of those things that I feel like I should be a little bit, at least more aware to even. It's in some of these things, like before you made me aware, it's hard to know, like, how am I supposed to get a top-down view and know of structural racism until someone like you comes and explains it to me. It's like, yeah, this actually goes on a larger level. And I'm sure there's many more examples in different industries. I mean, you just use redlining to outline like one example of it. Um, are there uh, are there any other types of like master types of racism I should be aware of? Because I'm like structural racism, never heard that term. Is this something I should really be aware of?
Yeah. So, there's also the prison industrial complex, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when it comes to, and again, even from an estate planner's perspective, like, this is can be kind of important, because, uh, it's very hard to pass assets onto a person if that person is incarcerated when at the time of the death of the relative. It's not like it's
Yeah.
impossible, but what good is an asset to someone that's in jail?
Yeah.
Like, what good does that do them? Like, it's not like they can use the money from, let's say I inherit the house and then I sell the house. Okay, is the money I get from selling the house that I inherited going to help me buy me out of jail? Like, it's not going to. I mean, I
Yeah.
can maybe use that, but proper estate planning would help even them in some respect. So prison industrial complex, the summary of it is that um, there are industries, or there are companies out there, they benefit from people being in jail,
Yeah.
not from people being rehabilitated in jail, leaving jail and not coming back again because they were properly rehabilitated. Like, there are
Yeah.
companies, specifically like Geo Group and Corrections Corporation of America, they benefit from people continuing to commit crimes even after they
Are
gotten
are
out of
the, are
jail. And
are
then
these the owners of the prisons that you're naming?
they
Yeah.
so they either own or they run some private prisons. Even though private prisons make up a small percentage of overall federal prisons,
Yeah.
I do know, I think at the end of the Obama administration, there was a goal to eventually get rid of private prisons.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about what the Trump administration has done under it, even though Trump is on his way out. I
Yeah.
don't know too much as to what Biden's going to do in terms of fully eliminating private prisons across the country, at least in
Uh-huh.
the federal system. There are still, I think, private prisons in many state systems. Then there's also the cash bail system, where basically, hey, if you can't afford to be bailed out of jail tonight,
Mm-hmm.
you basically gonna stay in jail. But that basically says that poor people, if they get accused of a crime or get charged with a crime, but they haven't been proven to commit the crime, they have to stay in jail overnight or for days, if not weeks. But those that can't afford it, i.e., the rich,
Yeah.
they can afford to be bailed out and to show up later at their trial date. But you have all these people who are just sitting in jails or prisons, but they actually haven't been convicted of a crime yet because they're too poor. And oftentimes that correlates with the color of their skin.
Yeah, and this is pretty consistent across the nation, right? Even though each state has their own laws, this is pretty, each county could have their own laws, but it seems pretty consistent thing, even from state to
Yeah.
state, right?
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like, I think one reason that estate planning can be important, even in that context, is that, every now and then, but I'm not saying it's just people of color, but a lot of times it is unfortunately enforced disproportionately on people of color. There are just random ways you can be found to be violation of the law and end
Yeah,
up getting jail time.
yeah,
One example of this is that I learned recently is that, and I'm actually hopefully going to be doing this soon,
yeah,
is in the area of gun trusts. Have you
yeah.
ever heard of a gun trust?
No, I have not.
So a lot of times when people think of trust, they think of something to hold money or maybe to hold
Yeah,
rental property.
yeah,
But a trust can also just be holding or having title to just firearms,
yeah.
just firearms, right?
Okay.
Why is that important? Because if you don't figure out who's going to get your guns when you die,
Yeah,
well, they might go in the hands of someone that, under the laws of the state where they live, not where you are, which might not be the same state, they might actually be disqualified, or it might be illegal for them to have a gun, which means that
okay.
once they inherit the gun and they have it in their hands, well, maybe they're an ex-con, or
Yeah,
maybe they have some other disqualifying thing. By mere fact of inheriting it, and then once they get it from their hands, from the executor, they've committed a felony by mere possession of the gun.
yeah.
Yeah. So if you
Yeah,
put it into a trust, the trust can be better
I see.
assess the situation and see whether or not that person should be getting the gun. Someone that's incarcerated or formerly incarcerated obviously cannot and should not receive the gun
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. But a gun trust can better avoid these issues where you're accidentally making some of your heirs or your beneficiaries felons.
Dude, Momo,
Like,
you are a walking encyclopedia, man. I don't like. I'm like, are you reading off a prompter or something? How do you have
nah,
all?
nah.
It's like, did you just study for your final? How do you know all this, like word for word,
I don't know.
literally?
Like I
Like,
said, I'm not gonna call myself a prodigy, but
yeah,
again,
you know,
you don't get 4 degrees in 7 years
yeah,
by not trying hard and by not studying hard, man.
yeah. I mean, you have some kind of way to recollect all that. Whatever kind of photographic or whatever helps you. Like, that's crazy. I can't. After I learn something, I forget it the next week. I'm like, how do you hold on to all that
Yeah,
information?
I know. I mean, wushu and actually also dance. Dance
Yeah.
also helps with this
Your
because in
memory, because you're
dance,
remembering all these steps and
yeah,
forms. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because in wushu, I have to work on how to improve certain movements, even if I'm working on only the exact same movement. And like a form in wushu might only be a minute to a minute and a half long,
Mm-hmm.
and you might spend literally a whole year, 2 years perfecting and mastering it. But in my dance classes, we are learning a 3 minute to 4 minute song,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes as little as 3 weeks to as no more than say 6 weeks. And so you have to learn a lot of steps in an hour's time of dance class. But over time, your mind feels like an AI where you're
Mm.
just quickly picking things up. Yes, you
Mm.
make mistakes. Then you quickly fix all those mistakes
That's
in a short
crazy.
amount of time. And so dance has been, and wushu have been great, not just for my body, but also for
Yeah.
my brain.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah.
forced to pick things up quickly. I have to.
It makes you a better lawyer. It's crazy. The things just work faster, because you've been training your memory on both sides. It's crazy how it all works together at the end of the day, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like when people see some of the combos I do, I mean, I may make it look easy with like the swords and shit,
Yeah.
but like that takes a lot of thinking about where exactly everything has to be at the exact same moment.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything has to be very precise,
Right. Or you
and
cut
it just
cut
improves my
yourself, right?
memory.
You could injure
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, I have some friends like they
Ah.
practice on the sword that it happens the most common on. There are three main swords in wushu. There's
Yeah.
northern broadsword, southern broadsword, and then there's the straight sword. Straight sword is the one I've seen people cut themselves the most in. I've
Wow.
seen stories of people cutting themselves with the straight sword or the
Yeah.
northern broadsword on their ear, man, and like
Oh.
part of their ear is like
Oh my
a bit of a tear. They
God.
have to go they have
No.
to get like one or two
Oh no,
stitches.
no, no.
Um, People have scraped their leg. And mind you, we're not using even quote unquote real swords. The
Yeah.
swords we're using are kind of like the sheet metal that you saw in theater people use to make thunder.
Yeah.
It's made of that material, but if you go fast enough, it can actually hurt. It can cut
Yeah.
you, man.
Yeah. I mean, like
It-
a blade of grass could cut you, going fast enough. So
yeah, or a paper can cut you, right?
yeah,
And then
exactly.
I also work with I work with stabs too, right? Like
Yeah.
the rods.
Yeah.
The stab I use isn't made of wood. I use one that's made of carbon fiber, and even that can
Ouch.
hurt.
I mean, carbon
Even that can
fiber
hurt.
goes even faster because it weighs less, so you get more. Yeah, it'll actually
Yeah,
hurt you
it feels
more.
light,
Yeah.
and
Um.
like it's crazy, man.
Well.
Um,
Well, how about the man? We went past the hour, so I
oh
want to
shoot.
ask one last question that might tie it all together because and maybe bring it directly to you because we were talking about racism, and I'm definitely aware with a name like Omar Ting. It's if you grew up without a normal name, you're gonna go through just even like weird moments of they look at you. It's like with a name like Mohammed, it's like I mean like how how was it living through the 9/11 period with like a Muslim sounding name? For me, that's right, right when I'm in college, and it's like, fuck, now my name's Omar. It just makes like traveling was difficult during that time period, and so since we're talking about racism, man, and it looks like you've really fully, embraced your name. You put it into your logo, so you've got if you were ever like in that area, you fully absorbed it and you're going full for it, you're being proud of it. But what was that journey? Did you, since we were talking about racism, did you, what is your experience? Like, I imagine you didn't just never experience it because I grew up in Texas too. And talk about the journey to kind of round out the show is the last theme that we
Yeah,
touch on.
yeah. So I'd say that being Muslim and being of South Asian descent. I mean, I think my parents did a pretty good job of raising me specifically in the parts of Houston that they did. I lived in Sugarland for the past 13 years. So like I'm 26 now, so like half my life I've been living in Sugarland.
Mm-hmm.
And Sugarland is a very diverse community,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in Fort Bend County as a whole. Like I think we're one of those minority and majority districts or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I've
Mm-hmm.
been fortunate enough for most of my life to not have to deal with racism in my
Mm-hmm.
personal life, at least towards me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know of plenty of friends and stories
Mm-hmm.
where every now and then, my black friend or a fellow Muslims, including Muslims, have told me stories about their racism
Mm-hmm.
or prejudice that they've received. I have had the only time I really felt like slightly less of a person for being Muslim or being brown
Mm-hmm.
was finding out of this one. You know how like you get your Facebook messages, but then you get spam messages from
Mm-hmm.
people that you don't even know,
Yeah.
or they're not even a friend of a friend on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Like I found a message that was like a year or two old. Like I literally only found it years after it was sent to me, and it was this guy calling me like a pedophile and saying
Mm.
Jesus is gonna come get you one day, or another, you pedophile.
Dang.
And that made me a little bit sad for like a minute, and
Yeah.
then it made me laugh because like this guy doesn't know who I am. I
Yeah.
mean, like I look at this guy's profile for a second, I'm like, look how ignorant this guy is. This freaking white redneck. Screw this guy.
You know how many Mohammeds there are? There's like a billion. Okay, go have fun,
Yeah,
bro.
I'm like, okay, dude, forget this guy. He doesn't know me.
Yeah.
I don't need this. So I
Yeah.
was raised by my parents with a lot of confidence. Now,
Yeah.
not that we do have this stage, so I will say this: I've probably known more Muslim women
Mhm.
who have been recipients of racism or
Mm.
prejudice
Mm.
than do Muslim men, because
Okay.
Muslim men,
Yeah.
because of the more freedom that they have,
Yeah.
at least in this country,
Yeah.
and in one way, it seems like they have more freedom than the women in our religion.
Yeah.
If a Muslim man doesn't have like a beard and a mustache,
Yeah.
and if he wants to wear his hair similar to like the Hispanics or the black friends that he knows, he
Yeah.
can get away with that a lot easier.
I see.
But a lot of Muslim women, as they get closer to their faith,
Mhm.
and they wear a hijab or a headscarf,
Mhm.
I mean, they're more of a walking target than
Mm.
the Muslim guy is, because the
Mm.
Muslim guy is just gonna be like, well, I can very easily change my clothing, my
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah.
But a Muslim woman, in her search for being
Yeah.
closer to God, she'll put
Yeah.
on a hijab. Even if a Muslim man does get a mustache you don't know for sure I'm Muslim because I could still be like a Hispanic Catholic or something,
Yeah.
right? I could that has a mustache
You don't
and a beard.
see, so
So
what you're saying, you don't stand out as much. It's pretty obvious when you see a hijab what's
exactly.
going on.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah.
yeah. I even have a minor in Spanish. Like when I did study abroad in Mexico, the locals thought I was one of them. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like as Muslim men, we have this privilege. Like this is literally
Yeah.
male privilege in
Oh,
action
yeah.
that literally shields me from racism.
Yeah.
Is that I can just
Wow.
pretend very easily to be a man of another faith or culture, but
I
our
never I
ladies,
never thought about
they
that, bro.
can't.
You could just be like hola and blend into the crowds, just I'd never occurred to me. Not even like that's not until you share that perspective with me, it's like like until you talk to people, you don't realize that this is other people's experience of life, because you only
Yeah,
know what you've lived through. That is
yeah.
incredible. That's
But
never been
yeah,
explained to me like that before.
yeah. I mean, I do have Muslim attorneys every now and then tell me stories of where their Arab or their Pakistani or their Indian client who's trying to immigrate into the United States has a hard time at the border or at the airport or with immigration authorities. And I think those are very structural
Yeah.
instances of racism or xenophobia in
Yeah.
action because they'll do that to the Muslims, but they won't do it to a Hindu coming from India, but
Mm,
they'll do it to a Muslim coming from India, for example.
I
So
see.
that's a example of xenophobia being mixed with Islamophobia.
Yeah.
So there are those instances. So again, I try to learn about the stories of others because it could one day happen to me. But I'm just gonna say I haven't. It's not like I've earned the ability or I've earned this bubble where I not have to really face much racism or prejudice in my life. I
Yeah.
still do chalk it up to some level of privilege, and the fact that again the ladies and those who are foreigners that are not born here in the United States, they're the ones that are going to have to more likely they're going to take the brunt of all the racism. So any racism
Mm,
that's was ever supposed to come my way but didn't, it probably went to some Muslim woman or to someone that wasn't
yeah.
born and raised here. Because like I'm born and raised here in this
Mhm.
country. Like, I
Mhm.
am proud to be an American
Mm,
just as much as I'm proud to be a Muslim,
mm.
just as much as I am proud to be, a lover or an aficionado of,
Yeah.
Chinese culture and Chinese
Yeah.
martial arts.
I feel you,
I
brother.
love the
Yeah.
fact, that I also have good friends in the Hispanic community because I do have a minor in Spanish and I
Mhm.
lived in Mexico for a little while.
Mhm.
But I do have my fair share of criticisms of this country.
Mhm.
There's a reason as to why, even bringing it back to, Islamic estate planning. Um, I do want Muslims to be aware that, even though we live in this country, even within its own laws, we can still be very true to the principles of our faith
Mhm.
and to the values of this country, and there doesn't have to be a contradiction, even though these countries' values in of itself, some of them are very problematic.
Mhm.
Because remember, as much as we may exhort values of freedom and order, from the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, this country was very much founded by wealthy white elitist, slave owning, landowners
Mhm.
who, they enslaved one race and they genocided another to pave the way for this country. you
Dang.
know and I as a Muslim have to come to terms with that yes,
Yeah.
I am proud to be a Muslim, but
Yeah.
I'm also having to do that in a country that is founded on ideals that if I lived during that period of time, what side of the line would I found myself on? What side in the American Revolution or the Civil War would I have found myself on? um and even if I sided with the North, I mean, in the Civil War, I would have still had some problems with, there were
Yeah.
some racists who were living in the North, trust me,
Yeah.
like there
So,
were.
sounds like you're a history buff too. You like to study
Yeah,
history.
I have to. I mean,
Yeah.
part of being Muslim is that when you live in the post 9/11 era and
Mhm.
your religion is criticized, you are forced to have to learn your religion in that environment. So that naturally means I have to learn the history of my religion and comparing that against the history of this country.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of Muslim historians or even historians in general that will tell you, Muslims were part of this country from the very beginning, even
Mhm.
before the United States was founded, right?
Mhm.
You have, amongst the African Americans, many of the slaves were Muslims in of themselves,
Mhm.
right? And their Muslim identity was thrown out or forced to be erased by their the slave owners.
Well, while we're closing with the topic of advantages and disadvantages, you already touched on a lot of just, between even this being a Muslim of born in America, just even whether you're female or male, there's advantages, disadvantages. Different races have different levels and types of racism. Are we leaving out any other advantages? Like you may have turned a potential disadvantage, right? People being racist towards you. Your name's Mohammed. They already kind of maybe have some stereotypes before they even call you, if that even prevents them from calling you, but you fully embraced it. And now, through networking and referrals, that's been, a source of your business. So turning a potential weakness into a strength. What other advantages or disadvantages might not be so obvious? And just to kind of close on that topic, or wherever it takes us towards the end.
Of being Muslim, or of
Of just
being
any
a
any
wushu?
any kind of
Anything. Yeah.
advantage or disadvantage, like you've really embraced your culture, your heritage. For example, some people, and I don't want to say one way or another is better or worse, but some people will just change their name to something more American or white sounding, so they can just blend in and not get judged, or even get their foot in the door. Like you even mentioned it, like if your name sounds black or Asian, you might not even get a loan or an interview, right? But you've definitely, due to your parents, the confidence you already mentioned, you've taken what a lot of people might be like, well, this is a disadvantage. Should I even change my name? And you're like, no, I'm gonna make a Asian looking logo, put my name. I'm not gonna change my name. And I ask because I kind of align with your confidence, but it didn't happen overnight. I was like, went through my level of not even bullying, but knowing that I had kind of a different name, and I had to come to terms with being confident about it, and it didn't happen overnight. So just want to see, how are you further using things that might be a disadvantage, and turning them into advantages, to kind of like, you specialize now in Asians and Muslims, where that might have at the beginning, you saw it as a weakness.
I think, part of it is like, again, when you are, I mean, for example, so like in law school, like
Uh-huh.
even to this day in law school, we still have a very big problem. We have slightly broken the glass ceiling a little bit in law schools, because now you have many law schools now where they're entering classes are 51 or 52% female and 48%
Mm,
or 49% male. So women in many law schools are outnumbering the men. So we've crossed that threshold, which I
mm,
think is amazing.
mm,
But when it comes to ethnicity,
mhm,
and the issue of, or like race,
mhm,
a lot of it's very hard to find a law school that is very close to, like, 50% or even more than 50% minority or people of color.
mm,
Whites very much still dominate the legal profession, and they dominate law schools, and they dominate legal
mhm,
academia,
mhm,
and other realms of academia.
mhm,
Like my law school was very proud in saying that, hey, for the past couple of years, or for quite some time, around 40 or so percent, or 40 plus percent of the entering class is, of a person of color.
mm,
If you flip that statistic around, that means that somewhere around 55 to 60% of this class is always white,
mm,
at least,
mhm,
right? But then they'll try to cover that by saying, oh, but we're always at least 50% female. And I'm
mhm,
like, I'm not trying to downplay white females, but we do have the issue of white feminism, where,
mhm,
in the earlier feminist movements, only white women were really included. Like when
mhm,
people talk about women's rights and voting
mm,
rights, like in the
mm,
1920s,
mm,
those women were mainly fighting for the right to vote for white women,
mm,
not black women or Hispanic women
mm,
or women of color. We now have this problem where, for me, I do try to empower women of color when
mhm,
and where I can. I think,
mhm,
one, because even though I am a man of color and I am a member of a minority faith,
mhm,
I think the confidence I had from my parents in growing up, my dad he was raised around, I think part of this is because he was raised around 10 brothers or sisters. So,
mhm.
a family with 11 children, his
Wow.
voice had to learn how to be very loud to be able to
Yeah.
stand out to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
So I inherited that loud voice, which is also
Uh.
why I do Southern style
Yeah.
wushu, because in my style, we have to shout very loudly, but the
Uh.
Northern style guys don't shout.
Uh-huh.
So I have a very confident, very strong voice. I use that voice not just for my clients, but I also use it as an advantage when I have to speak up for women of color, or
Mhm.
any situation where I feel that women of color, whether it's inside the legal profession or outside of it, I will
Mhm.
always do what I can, whether it's behind the scenes or in person out in broad daylight.
Mhm.
If I can find a way to advance a woman of color in the legal profession, whether it's advocating her to be nominated or to be made a partner in a law firm, or for her to go on the bench and become a judge, or for her to get on some kind of committee, or for her to become a law professor at some law school, like I will be there. I will be like try to be among the first people there to advocate for those women of color. So even though I am, again, a person of color, I very much have to remember that a lot of times my male privilege may very well completely take out any disadvantages from being a person of color, or being Muslim. And I don't let that stop me, because there are people who are way more disadvantaged than me, and I cannot let them be left behind, even though I may have my own few gripes with the system, because they probably need me a lot more than I need them, or I need the system to solve my problems. So I always tell, a lot of my classmates in law school, a lot of my, especially like the Asian females, I said, hey, like, look, if there's a situation where you need me to speak up for you, or write you a letter of recommendation, or to help you out with something, just let me know, and like I'll be there without a moment's notice. And they know that even to this day, that's the case.
Well, that's the best opening line to try to approach a female I've heard in a while.
Dude, side note, you know how one of your other guests was Asen Lee?
Yeah, the Asian dating coach for men. Yeah, very enjoyable episode.
I
Yeah,
don't mind admitting this.
yeah.
Earlier today, I had a consult call with him.
No, I'm proud. I'm happy. That's awesome. I mean, no, I'm like thrilled. That's like just to kind of go full circle, and have that's awesome. I mean, even after getting to know him and just hearing his philosophy and where and just kind of like looking at things from a top down and like top out a systemic racism example, right, in society. I think females get it worse, from white males. It's like, but until like, I talk to someone like Ison, and he brings light to it. I'm like, I never looked at it from like that perspective. I didn't realize, I didn't realize the world needed Asian dating coach for men. I'm like, yes, because Asian men have a separate experience that's different, So yeah, no, that's really awesome.
Yeah, like the weird thing is, like, I know I call myself as an egg tart as a joke, but
Yeah.
one reason, we can even on this note if you want, one reason that I feel so connected with not just the Chinese community, but the East Asian and Southeast Asian community, is that they have taken me over the past couple of years, or really even since throughout my childhood. My top 10 friends, they're all Chinese or Vietnamese, I'd probably say, right? And most of them are not even Muslim. It's because, they really, even though our skin colors are on the opposite end of the spectrum, like I'm brown and they're freaking like yellow, or maybe pale as hell. They really do take me
Yeah.
in as their own, as a brother, or,
Yeah.
or as a son. Like
Yeah.
I really do see my Shifu as like my second father, as my Chinese
Yeah.
father,
Yeah.
and I really do see my dance teacher as like my Chinese mother.
Yeah. And I didn't ask you, but did you grow up in Houston through your formative childhood years?
Yeah,
And then
I lived in, yeah.
okay. And I should remind, is this true, right? Because it was in Arlington. I had a huge Vietnamese population there, which is why I grew up eating pho, and that's still my favorite food. Is it what's the Vietnamese population like in Houston? Is it still like very large and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's still very large. Like one
yeah.
of my main clients is a guy named he's also a friend, and he's also, I originally met him because he was the boyfriend of one of my friends from high school that I've known him for like 10 years. And
Yeah.
he's also a good friend, is a guy named Tony Nguyen.
Mhm.
He owns a restaurant, awesome restaurant. Look it up. I encourage everyone to look it up the next time you're in Houston. If you want some badass Vietnamese Cajun crawfish,
Oh
known for
shit.
the H-Town Bang sauce, which, by the way, last year I
Yeah.
won an eating competition where
What?
I had to eat 5 rounds of spicy
Oh my God.
crawfish, and it was his crawfish. I went through 5 rounds of the hottest
What?
peppers in the world, and I
No
had to
way.
beat a white guy to do it.
Oh
And I
my
beat it. It
God.
was at his restaurant.
Oh my
It was
God.
at Saigon House.
Saigon
Everyone look up
House.
Saigon House,
All
the
right.
restaurant.
All
Right.
right.
That is one of Tony's first projects.
All right.
And another project that he has is another Vietnamese restaurant. Have you ever heard, Gordon Ramsay's show, Master Chef?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the woman Christine Ha, the blind chef?
My fiance would. I don't. She's always watching that show. I'm on my computer playing video games. But yeah, that's one of the shows she watches.
Christine won, I think, was it season 3 of Master Chef,
Yeah.
of Gordon Ramsay's show.
Okay.
Christine Ha and my friend Tony Nguyen,
Wow.
they are co-owners of a new restaurant in the Heights area of Houston. I encourage everyone to go there. It's called Shin Chow, and it is
All
authentic
right.
Vietnamese fine dining, and it's amazing
Wow.
food. I am probably going there again tomorrow night. I love their
Wow.
Wagyu steak,
Wow.
right?
They have
And
Wagyu. How is that served?
because Tony is a master of Asian fusion food.
Yeah.
Man, that's what. That's freaking
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
The man is moving on into being almost like a pitmaster too. He has a smoker and everything. It's crazy.
Wow. Wow.
Even though he's making Vietnamese food. Like
That's
I don't think
crazy.
Xin Chao has fought
Man,
yet, but Saigon House does.
imagine the pork belly coming out of that thing.
Oh yeah, he has against the Fort Belly. So I'm saying like
Yeah.
he's like screw the rib witch.
Yeah.
Eat this Vietnamese rib croissant
Oh
sandwich
my
I can make
God.
for you.
I know, right?
It's
Yeah.
dude, like the next time you go to Houston, you got to come to Xin Chao,
All right.
and if you all can also go out there to go to Saigon House to go to
All
both of
right.
their restaurants. But the Vietnamese community is big and strong in Houston. And the interesting thing is that Tony's girlfriend is Stephanie Tran. She's the friend that I've had for a long time since high school,
Mhm.
and she's Vietnamese, and she's a great friend of mine. She's a friend and at times a mentor. She's also a great client.
Mhm.
Vietnamese and Bengali have quite a bit in common, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Both of those countries have crazy histories of their revolutions being tied to proxy wars between greater powers. So the revolution is their own, but they were very much pawns in the proxy wars going between other countries. And both Bengali and Vietnamese moved to Houston in large droves,
Mhm.
specifically because Houston has a tropical climate that is
Mm.
very close to back home in Vietnam and
Talk about
Bangladesh.
getting a history lesson today in many different subjects. And I assume you're Bengali. I didn't ask you earlier,
Yeah,
but
I am
okay.
Bengali. I think I
Okay,
did mention in the beginning.
okay, did you? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm you know what? I'm just gonna blame it on being autistic. Sometimes I don't pay attention, but
Dude,
yeah.
don't worry, man. But yeah, Bengali and Vietnamese, they make great friends. I'm not the only
Okay.
great Bengali friend she has too. So,
Yeah.
if any Vietnamese out there, who knows, you might find a great brown friend in a Bengali,
And
if you can find one.
and talk about being a horrible host. My last guest is Ghosh, Ghose. Sometimes it's pronounced differently, but he pronounces it Ghosh, or it's spelled differently. Is that a Bengali name? And I know there was someone on Reddit asked, and I forgot what he said. He's from but is that a?
Um,
Because I think that's what someone
I
asked on the Reddit
That's a
thread.
good question.
Yeah.
I don't often hear Ghosh as a last name in the Bengali community here in
Yeah.
Houston, which is pretty big in of itself. So I think it's actually more of an Indian name, but it could be an
Yeah.
East Indian name. Because
I
remember
see.
that Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan
Yeah.
used to be all part of one country under the British Raj. So like on my
Yeah.
grandfather's birth certificate, he was born in like the 1930s. On his birth certificate, it says that he was born in India under the
Yeah.
British Raj.
Okay.
But my mom, because my mom was born after the revolution, her birth certificate says Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
So there is kind of like some people who are physically in India,
Mm-hmm.
who might be ethnically Bengali, but their families don't live in Bangladesh. And so, there might be some people who last name is Ghosh and they're Bengali, but I think it's more than likely it is an Indian name. And I know that
Okay.
because I worked at an Indian restaurant.
Yeah.
There was a dish called Mirchi Ghost.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
it's Indian.
Dude,
I'm gonna say that.
you have an encyclopedic answer for everything.
Hey, dude,
That's crazy.
when
You should
when you're an
have you gone
attorney,
on Jeopardy before? You'd win some money. Yeah.
I don't know. Hey, but when you're an attorney
Yeah.
and you're on trial,
Yeah.
you don't have time to think of what the objection is or what the argument is. You
Yeah.
either know it or you don't.
Yeah. Well, how about this? I'm gonna roll our outro music, but I want you to, and I don't remember if you answered this in the thread on Asian Hustle Network, but if you were in the elevator and imagine a young hustler asks you for advice, and you only have 30-second elevator pitch to give this young hustler, what kind of advice would you give him or her?
Hey, when the rest of the world doesn't believe in you, just remember, the Wushu Lawyer does.
and you would smile and give them that evil laugh right before the elevator door opens and you make your exit.
Exactly, man. When they exit, they see my logo on the back of my jacket.
Well, I don't know whether to call you the Wushu Lawyer, Momo, marketing branding expert, but thank you for being on the show, brother. We almost hit 2 hours. That's a record for me.
I know, right?
Yeah. All right, that's a
All right,
wrap,
hey,
guys.
Let me give you a salute. The Wushu salute. Right there.
All right.
There,
All right. I don't
there
know
we go.
I don't know if I'm allowed to give it back. Okay. Peace
Totally,
out,
dude,
guys.
do it, man.